Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weirdly Cosmic podcast. And this is going to be an all signs forecast for the Mars retrograde in Gemini that begins tonight. I'm recording this on October the 29th. It begins on October the 30th and will continue through till January the 12th. So it's a really long retrograde. And for more on the actual kind of retrograde energy in general, I'm going to link to a video I did with an interview I did with Mandi from Ecstatic Astrology, where we had a very lengthy conversation about the Mars retrograde in Gemini and how it's the first retrograde fully in Gemini since 1943 into 1944. But for you, I wanted to do this separately. So we're going to look at your rising sign if you know it. It will also apply a little bit to your sun sign and even a little bit to your moon sign. So I'm going to go through all the signs and tell you what areas of life might be affected or will be affected by this Mars retrograde in Gemini. And really, you will have been feeling this already because Mars has been in his pre-shadow retrograde for a little while and will not leave the post-retrograde shadow until March next year. So it's a long journey with this Mars retrograde, and it's taking us right through the November the 8th blood red moon eclipse, and things are going to be a little bit wonky because Mars is stationing retrograde square to Neptune. See how how complex it is anyway. So I'll bear with me a second. I want to go back to Gemini. So I'm actually going to start the forecast with Gemini rising, seeing as this is happening in your sign. So for all Gemini rising and Gemini suns, this is in your first house. Mars is retrograding in your first house. Now, I would listen for everybody that's listening. So for example, if you're Gemini rising, I would listen to the first house forecast, but also a little bit to the second house forecast, because Mars is retrograding right near the end of the sign, which means that he's really also in this house a little bit too. So yeah, so you get the idea. So really, for Gemini rising and Gemini sun, this is really about how others see you, especially initially. This is about your natural style, your appearance, how others really meet you one-on-one when they connect with you. Because this is Mars and this is in Gemini, which is Mercury ruled, which is a lot about communication, voice, news, etc., and also our community to a degree, all that we're in community with Mars being retrograde in this first house. You may feel like there's some barbs being thrown at you through this retrograde. People might come back from the past. There might be news from the past. There may be people projecting their opinions onto you with Mars retrograde in the first house. But for overall, this is really about you rethinking and evaluating what energy and drive you are putting out when people first meet you. And there will be a little bit for you of the second house as well, which is about your self-confidence, your self-worth, and all your resources, how you earn your money. So a little bit of re-evaluation in those areas too for Gemini rising. Cancer rising. For you, listen to Gemini a little bit, what was said about the first house, but this is primarily for you in your 12th house. And, this is nebulous fears. This is with Mars retrograding through this house. You may be feeling like you've got hidden enemies coming out of the woodwork, and you may really have some big shadow fears about kind of people being out to get you a little bit. But really what the lesson of the Mars retrograde for you in the 12th house is that you are rethinking your relationship with the collective unconscious. You are revisiting it, what you put out in the world, what you fear. You're dealing with probably some nebulous fears coming up and how to let them move through you and move forward. Also, this 12th house is really an area that's very associated with the magical, the mysterious, and all forms of kind of like meditation and so on and so forth. So you may, for example, with Mars retrograde in Gemini in general, being about learning as well, a review of what we're learning, it could be a great time to take a course of study. For example, a course in meditation or a course in something like intuitive art or a very kind of magical the mystery, where you're exploring the mysteries. Okay, so Leo, for you, this is going to be, again, listen a little bit to Cancer, but for you primarily, this is in your 11th house. This is your hopes, your wishes, particularly around groups, causes, social consciousness, big message as well for entrepreneurs. What's your big message that you're spreading out in the world? Again, you may be reviewing your community liaisons. People might come out back from the past. You may feel like barbs are being thrown at you in some groups and organizations as you revisit this, with Mars being very internalized. Of course, a lot of Mars in Gemini barbs are often self-talk, so to speak. But this is definitely for you in the area of friend groups and work groups and corporations and organizations that you operate within, where you find your people. You may be re-evaluating who your people are, so to speak, moving forward. So for Virgo, Virgo rising, Virgo sun, Virgo moon, but primarily Virgo rising. Again, listen a little bit to the Leo forecast for the 11th house, but for you, this is primarily in your 10th house. Mars is going to travel backwards towards that midheaven and stop at 8 degrees. And so this is about your visibility and your public reputation and how people see you out in the public, in the world. It's also got a little bit to do with your career or your mission in life. So there's going to be a lot of reevaluation here, and kind of, this could be deciding that you're done with a particular kind of public presence or particular public career thing. You may go as Mars retrogrades through this into January, you may decide to make a complete career change with Mars retrograding through this house. But at the very minimum, how people see you and your visibility and your public reputation is going to shift throughout this period. Libra. Libra, this is 9th house. This is religion, travel, sources of inspiration and expansion, though. And so this would be a great time for Libra rising to take some kind of study of higher learning. Philosophies, any kind of higher learning, doesn't have to be formal. You may just step really into reading a whole philosopher's works or something like that, or listening to podcasts on philosophy. But it's definitely kind of a drive to learn and learn a lot about areas of sources of expansion and inspiration. So dive in, find something to study and learn. If you like to travel, Libra rising, you may find that Mars is kind of holding you back or making travel kind of very wonky. There may be changes in travel plans, and you may, like, if you say, if you've planned a great um, tour around Europe, all the details kind of might keep shifting, or things might, fall apart a little bit in part of the plans. So it's probably better to spend this time focusing on the higher learning, really, than being out in the world. So Scorpio, for you, this is in the 8th house of intimacy. And so with Mars being the ruler of Scorpio, um, and and the 8th house being very scorpionic in nature, this is going to be some real deep passion and deep exploration and psychic surgery of the deep psyche and the magic and mystery that lies beneath. There may be some exploration of taboo areas, get a bit of kink on during this period, or because it's the house of shared resources as well, there could be some news around shared resources coming in, with this being Gemini, which is Mercury ruled in news. But it's definitely about ideas. You may be, for example, tempted to explore Tantra or something like that during this period, or exploration of the tarot, all of those taboo, mysterious, kind of murky areas. So kind of fun for you, Scorpio, because you like these areas. And Mars is your ruling planet, so hey ho. So Sagittarius, this is in your house of significant relationships and how you compromise yourself for others. So with Mars retrograding in this house, you might be feeling a little bit kind of assertive in others. You may be saying, no, I'm not, all this time I've cared what you think, and your opinion of me has mattered. No more. I'm kind of reviewing that. And you may find yourself on occasion, with this being Mars, feeling a little bit overly assertive as you redefine your place in your significant relationships. So try and take a breath, give yourself some breathing room before you speak. Think before you speak is a great idea for Sagittarius rising and Sagittarius sun, because Sagittarius tends to be a little bit blurty anyway. So think of Gemini being the breath, because it's an air sign, and maybe take some deep breaths before you speak. Capricorn, this is in the house of daily routines and work, the 6th house. This is work, service, some areas of health and pets. And so you may be reviewing your whole schedule, your whole daily routine, how you want to serve others in future. Complete reevaluation. You may exit this period with a whole work-life balance and how you work totally reorganized. Okay, so 6th house is very much about how you organize your daily routines and your daily work. So get to work on reorganizing and think about how you want to kind of schedule your time moving forward. Aquarius, for you, this is in the 5th house of creative self-expression and children. And so this is a great, and also joy and hobbies and sport. So this is a great reevaluation of where you're putting your energy and will and drive. Where do you want to have your fun and creativity moving forward? Everything's likely to be changed by the end of this Mars retrograde. But Mars being energy and drive and will, you're really rethinking where you want to have your fun, what brings you joy, where your creative self-expression is going. So look forward to that reevaluation. Now, Pisces, this is in the house of the home. You may do a complete home remodel. It's also your nature of your inner life and your could be one of your parents. It's also your ancestors. It might be a great time to go and join ancestry.com, for example, and explore your family tree. But at the very least, the details of how your home's organized as well. You may kind of move all the furniture around or decide to do a small remodel, or just redecorate in some way. But also internally, it's kind of about thinking about who you are deep inside. And with this being Mars and Mars retrograde, there may be some barbs that to yourself. You may go, it may emerge, or you may be reflecting on areas where you kind of beat yourself up a little bit. So try not to do that too. Aries, this is in your 3rd house. And of course, Mars is your ruling planet too, if you're Aries rising. And so this retrograde is really significant for you and Scorpio particularly. But this is in your 3rd house. And this is your perceptions. This is how you think, you speak, your voice. It's also to do with siblings and local community and short journeys. So there's going to be a lot of review and reflection on those areas. And with it being the area of siblings, if there's any problems in any of the relationships with your siblings, you'll probably be revisiting that, or it may re-emerge in terms of them coming back to you for a start. So just think about all those areas. And because it's Mars in Gemini and about speaking and voice, just be wary of being overly aggressive with your words during this time. It's a good thing for everybody to think of that, but particularly Mars-ruled people. Taurus, this is your 2nd house. And so this is about your self-esteem, your self-worth, how you earn your money. You might be reflecting on and thinking a lot about your value, what you value, your core values is another thing, and your relationship with nature and the world. And so that's going to be an extended reflection area for you too. So that's taken us all through the signs. So now please do not forget to subscribe to my channel. And I just wanted to do this separate because the call I did with Mandi Ray is quite lengthy, but I would suggest taking a listen to our chat. I'll put the link to that video in the show notes. And we explored quite a lot of things because I think this Mars retrogrades are usually quite memorable, and I think this one is particularly memorable and confusing because of the fact Mars is stationing in square to Neptune and Jupiter in Pisces. So there's going to be some big rethinking and some big confusion around. So try to make the most of it, and I'll see you in the next video.